They say a man who stays quiet has nothing to say. That's what people think when they look at you and see stillness. They think, he doesn't know, he doesn't notice, he doesn't care. But I'll let you in on a little secret. Quiet is a language. And the man who speaks it fluently has already done his thinking, already done his planning, and already made his peace with what comes next. For months. That's how long it had been since I touched my wife. For months since my lower back surgery. For months of sleeping on separate sides of the same bed. And when that prenatal alert hit our shared tablet on a Tuesday morning in May, I didn't need anyone to do the math for me. Welcome back to Silent Fortune Stories. Grab your snacks, get comfortable, and remember, every quiet person has a story that would make your jaw drop. We're here to tell the ones that matter. Subscribe so you never miss a story. My name is Gerald Moss. I'm 54 years old, and I have spent 29 years of my life on my knees. Not praying, though Lord knows I've done my share of that too. But laying tile, ceramic, porcelain, natural stone, marble if the client could afford it. 29 years across the greater Columbus, Ohio area, from Upper Arlington kitchens to Westerville bathrooms to church halls in Hilliard that needed new flooring before Easter service. That's what I do. That's what I've always done. I'm not a flashy man. Never have been. I drive a 2011 Ford F-150 with a cracked dashboard and a toolbox bolted to the bed that weighs more than most people's furniture. I wear the same pair of scuffed brown steel-toed boots every single day, have for 11 years now. The leather is cracked, the soles have been replaced twice, and the left toe cap has a permanent smear of thin-set mortar that won't come off no matter how hard you scrub. But they fit right, and they've never let me down, and in my line of work, that's all you can ask from anything. Or anyone. I married Renata when I was 25 and she was 23. She was working at a dentist's office on Morse Road, front desk, answering phones and filing insurance claims. She had this laugh. I don't know how to describe it except to say it made you believe things were going to be okay. Made me believe it, anyway. We bought the house on Carver Street in 1999. A 3-bedroom ranch with a detached garage and a backyard big enough for the kids to run around in. I paid the mortgage on time every single month for 23 years. Never missed. Not once. Not when work was slow, not when materials got expensive, not when my knees started giving me trouble in my 40s and I had to ice them every night just to be able to kneel on hard subfloor the next morning. We had 2 kids, Marcus and Tiana, both in college now. Marcus at Ohio State studying engineering, Tiana at Wright State doing nursing. I'm proud of those 2 in a way I don't think I have the vocabulary to express properly. Every dollar that didn't go into the house, into the truck, into keeping the lights on, it went to them. Their tuition, their books, their apartment deposits. Renata and I agreed early on, we live small so they can live big. And I held up my end of that agreement with both hands. But 29 years of kneeling on concrete takes a toll. Not just on your body, on everything. Last January, my lower back finally gave out.
Ela 4 ela 5 discarniation.
Surgery in February. Recovery that was supposed to take 8 weeks but stretched into months because I went back to work too soon and re-aggravated the nerve. By March, I was sleeping with a pillow between my knees and couldn't bend over to tie my own boots. And certain parts of married life, the physical parts, those came to a complete stop. For months. Not because I didn't want to, because I physically could not. Renata said she understood. She said she was patient. She said, and I remember the exact words, "We've got time, Gerald. Heal first." I didn't know it yet, but time was something she had already started spending elsewhere. The first sign came about 2 weeks before the Cancún trip, and I should have looked closer, but I was too deep in my own pain to notice. Renata started buying new clothes. Now, that in itself isn't unusual, people buy clothes. But these weren't the kind of clothes she normally wore. She'd been a slacks and blouse woman for as long as I'd known her. Practical, comfortable, the kind of outfits you'd wear to a dentist's office or a church potluck. But suddenly there were shopping bags from stores I didn't recognize, things with tags in smaller sizes, brighter colors, fabrics that didn't seem designed for comfort. I saw a swimsuit on the bed one afternoon. 2-piece. Leopard print. She's 49 years old. I didn't say anything. I told myself she was excited about the trip. Every woman deserves to feel good about herself. That's on me. The second sign was the phone. Renata had never been secretive about her phone. For years, it sat on the kitchen counter face up, charging next to the toaster. She'd leave it in the bathroom, in the car, on the couch cushion. She didn't guard it because there was nothing to guard. But starting around late March, the phone went everywhere with her. Into the bathroom during showers. Under her pillow at night. Face down on every surface. And one evening, I remember this clearly because I was lying on the couch with an ice pack on my back watching the Reds lose again. Her phone buzzed, and she picked it up, read something, and then walked into the laundry room to respond. The laundry room, to answer a text. I filed it away, didn't press, didn't ask. Looking back, I can see now that I was already doing what I always do, observing before acting. The third sign was the trip itself. When Renata first mentioned the Cancún trip, she said it was a girl's thing. Her and 4 coworkers from the dental group she transferred to the year before. 10 days at an all-inclusive resort. I said sure. She deserved a vacation. Lord knows I wasn't much company at the time. Hobbling around the house in a back brace and taking muscle relaxers that made me drowsy by 7 o'clock. She asked for spending money, and I gave her $1,400 in cash. Money I pulled from the savings I keep in the garage lockbox. I counted it out at the kitchen table and put it in an envelope, and she tucked it into her carry-on without counting it herself. She trusted that I'd give her the right amount, and I trusted that she'd come back the same woman who left. I handed her that envelope and kissed her goodbye at the front door, and she smiled at me, and it looked real, and she said, "I love you, Gerald," and I said it back, and I meant it. That was the last time I would say those words without something heavy behind them. The signs were there. I just wasn't reading them. Amazing what trust does. It makes you blind on purpose because the alternative, suspicion, feels worse than ignorance. At least, it does until the truth shows up uninvited on a Tuesday morning in May, buzzing on a tablet screen that nobody thought to log out of. Renata came back from Cancun tanned and distant. The tan I expected. The distance I noticed but didn't name. She unpacked her suitcase, did 2 loads of laundry, and settled back into the rhythm of the house as if nothing had changed. But something had. She was quieter. Not sad quiet, careful quiet. The kind of quiet that comes from holding something inside and choosing every word before it leaves your mouth. I know that kind of quiet well because I am that kind of quiet. And when you see it in someone who isn't usually that way, it tells you everything. 11 weeks passed. She gained weight, but she'd always fluctuated, and I didn't think much of it. She started making excuses not to drink wine at dinner. Said she was doing a cleanse. She went to bed earlier. She avoided certain topics. And then, at 14 weeks, the truth arrived. It was a Tuesday. I was sitting at the kitchen table eating cereal. Raisin Bran. The same thing I've eaten every morning for 15 years. The shared family tablet was propped up against the fruit bowl because Marcus had sent a link to some engineering competition he was in and I wanted to read the article. And then the screen lit up with a notification. Prenatal appointment reminder. Renata's name. The OBGYN clinic on East Broad Street. Wednesday at 10:15 a.m. I set my spoon down. I read it again. Prenatal. 14 weeks. I had not been with my wife in over 4 months. Since before my surgery. Since January. It was now May. And my wife was 14 weeks pregnant. The math didn't require a calculator. I didn't yell. I didn't throw anything. I didn't stand up too fast or breathe too hard. I folded my napkin, a paper napkin, the kind that comes in the pack of 200 from Kroger, and I set it next to my bowl and I pushed my chair back, and I put on my scuffed brown steel-toed boots, the same pair I've worn every day for 11 years, and I drove to my job site on Sunbury Road where I was laying 12-inch porcelain in a dentist office lobby. Ironic, I know. And I worked a full 8-hour day without mentioning a single word to anyone. The silence lasted 6 weeks. 6 weeks of sitting across from Renata at dinner, passing the salt, asking about her day, watching the news together. 6 weeks of church on Sundays, sitting in the third pew at Greater Hope Baptist, singing hymns beside a woman carrying another man's child. 6 weeks of swallowing every word that tried to claw its way out of my throat. Not because I didn't have anything to say, but because I wasn't ready yet. And Gerald Moss does not act until he is ready. Then came the Sunday lunch at Patricia's house. Renata's mother. That old colonial on Bryce Road with the wraparound porch and the dining room that smells like potpourri and pine sol. Patricia had invited the whole family. 12 people at that table. Renata's parents. Her brother David and his wife. Her cousins. Her aunts. And her sister Diane. Renata stood up between the baked chicken and the sweet potatoes and announced to the entire table that she was pregnant. She put her hand on her stomach and smiled and said she and Gerald were blessed, and that at their age, it was a miracle. 12 people applauded. Patricia cried. David raised his glass. Everyone looked at me, the proud father, the quiet man who'd been given a gift from God. And I smiled. I nodded. I said, "We're grateful." Diane sat directly across from me. Diane, who had been at Renata's house the week the tablet notification went off. Diane, who had helped Renata change the tablet password afterward. Diane, who already knew the full truth, every single piece of it, because Renata had confided in her during a phone call I overheard fragments of 3 weeks prior. Diane, who knew that this baby could not possibly be mine. She made brief eye contact with me, and then she looked down at her plate, and she said absolutely nothing. But it was what happened after the lunch that sealed it. Everyone was in the kitchen helping Patricia clean up, and I was standing by the screen door looking at the backyard, and Diane came up beside me with a dish towel over her shoulder and a smile on her face. A smile I will never forget, because it was the kind of smile that says, "I know what I know, and I've chosen my side, and it isn't yours." And she said it, casually, like it was nothing. "You seem fine with everything, Gerald." 5 words. That's all she gave me. Not a question. Not a confession. Not an apology. A test. She was testing me to see if I knew. And if I did know, she was telling me, without saying it, that she didn't care. That she had chosen her sister, and that I could go ahead and suffer in silence, and that was just fine with her. I wasn't fine. I looked at Diane, and I gave her the same quiet nod I'd been giving everyone for 6 weeks. And I said, "Just taking it one day at a time." She patted my shoulder and walked away, and something in me was done. Not broken. Done. There is a difference. Broken means you fall apart. Done means you stop participating in your own humiliation and you start building something else entirely. That evening, after the drive home from Patricia's house, after Renata fell asleep on the couch watching a home renovation show, which is its own kind of irony when you're married to a man who renovates homes for a living, I went to the garage. The garage is mine. Always has been. Renata never comes out there. She doesn't like the sawdust, doesn't like the cold concrete in winter, doesn't like the smell of adhesive and grout that's seeped into the walls over 2 decades. And that's exactly why it's where I keep the things that matter most. Beneath my workbench, the same workbench I built in 2004 from reclaimed oak, there is a fireproof lockbox bolted to the underside with lag screws. You wouldn't see it unless you got on your hands and knees and looked. And nobody in my house has ever gotten on their hands and knees in that garage except me. I opened it. Inside were 7 years of documents. 7 years of careful, quiet, systematic preparation, because this wasn't the first time I'd suspected something wasn't right. 7 years ago, in 2017, there was a man named Ray at Renata's office. I never had proof. I never caught anything concrete. But the pattern was there. The late nights, the new perfume, the way she'd hang up the phone when I walked into the room. And rather than confront her with suspicion, rather than start a war I might lose because I had no ammunition, I called my friend Curtis. Curtis is a paralegal at a firm on South High Street. We've known each other since high school, played basketball together at Eastmore Academy before either of us knew what a deposition was. I told Curtis what I was feeling, and Curtis, being the kind of man who thinks in documents and timelines, said, "Gerald, if you ever need to protect yourself, you need to have your papers in order. Let me help you." And so for 7 years, quietly, methodically, Curtis and I built a file. A detailed asset record of every joint account, checking, savings, the kids' 529 plans. A log of every property improvement I personally funded with money from my side jobs. The new roof in 2019, the kitchen remodel in 2020, the bathroom addition in 2021. Receipts. Bank statements. Photos with timestamps. Contractor invoices with my name on them. Every single dollar I had poured into that house on Carver Street, documented and organized in labeled folders. And 3 weeks before Patricia's Sunday lunch, 3 weeks after that prenatal notification hit the tablet, I had done something else. I drove to a family law attorney's office on East Main Street, a woman named Valerie Chun whom Curtis had recommended, and I completed a private DNA-based legal consultation. I sat in her office for 90 minutes and laid out everything, the timeline, the surgery, the 4 months of physical separation, the pregnancy, the tablet notification, Diane's involvement. Attorney Chin didn't flinch. She'd heard it all before. She looked at my file, the 7 years of documents, and she said, "Mr. Moss, you are more prepared than 90% of the clients who walk through my door." That night, I sat in my truck in the driveway for 45 minutes. The engine was off. The street was dark. The house was quiet. Renata was upstairs sleeping. Tiana had texted me a photo of her study group at the library, and Marcus had sent a thumbs-up emoji about something I don't remember. My children. My kids. The ones I'd sacrificed everything for. The ones whose world was about to change because their mother made a choice in Cancun that she couldn't undo. I picked up my phone and dialed Curtis's number. He answered on the second ring like he'd been waiting. "It's time," I said. "I'll have the envelope ready by morning," he said. And he did. The next morning, when I walked out to my truck at 5:45 a.m., there was a sealed manila envelope sitting on the passenger seat. Curtis must have come by sometime before dawn. That man has never let me down. Not once. Not in 36 years of friendship. I sat there in the cab of my truck with the engine idling and the envelope in my hands. I hadn't opened it yet. I didn't need to. I already knew what was inside. I already knew what I needed to do when I walked back through that front door. I wasn't fine. I was building something. And last night, I finally made my move. If you've made it this far, do us one quick favor. Subscribe. A lot of people watch without ever doing it, but it costs you nothing and means everything to us. Thank you genuinely. I chose a Monday. There's nothing special about a Monday. It's just the most ordinary day of the week. And I have learned that the most important decisions in a man's life should be made on ordinary days. Because extraordinary days give you too much emotion to hide behind. Renata was in the kitchen making coffee when I came in from the garage. She had on a bathrobe and house slippers, and her stomach was showing now, round and undeniable. And she turned to me with that same careful smile she'd been wearing for weeks and said, "You're up early. I need to talk to you," I said. She set the coffee pot down. Something in my voice must have registered, because for the first time in months, her careful mask slipped for half a second. Just a flicker. Then she recovered. "Sure, baby. What's going on?" I sat down at the kitchen table. The same table where I'd found out. The same chair. I set the manila envelope in front of me, still sealed. And then I set down a second folder, the one from the lockbox. The 7-year folder. Labeled, tabbed, organized. "Sit down," I said. She sat. She was watching the envelope the way a person watches a dog they're not sure about. "Renata," I said, "I know about the baby." She opened her mouth and I held up my hand. Not aggressive, just enough. "Don't," I said. "I'm not asking you. I'm telling you what I know. I know the baby isn't mine. I know it can't be mine. I have not been with you since January 14th. Your prenatal records, which came through our shared tablet because you forgot to log out of the health portal, show you at 14 weeks as of May. That means conception happened during or right around your Cancun trip. The trip I gave you $1,400 in cash for." She was crying now. Not the loud kind. The scared kind. The kind that comes when someone realizes they've been seen, truly seen, and there is no performance left that will cover it. "Gerald, please, I'm not finished." I opened the second folder. The 7-year folder. "This," I said, tapping the first tab, "is a complete record of every joint account we share. Checking, savings, both kids' college funds. Account numbers, balances as of last Friday, transaction histories going back 36 months. I turned to the second tab. "This is a log of every home improvement I have personally funded on this property. The roof, $6,200 out of my side job savings. The kitchen remodel, $8,900. The bathroom addition, $11,200. All documented. Receipts, invoices, photos with timestamps. She wasn't crying anymore. She was staring. This, I continued, turning to the third tab, is a legal consultation I completed 3 weeks ago with a family law attorney named Valerie Chin. It includes a preliminary assessment of asset division under Ohio domestic relations law, a timeline of our marriage and financial contributions, and a recommendation for how to proceed with a petition for dissolution. I paused. And a paternity disclaimer. The room was so quiet I could hear the coffee maker still dripping. "You've been planning this?" she whispered. I looked at her. 29 years. 29 years of kneeling on hard floors so she could stand on soft ones. 29 years of coming home smelling of grout and thinset, eating dinner at this table, watching our kids grow, believing that the woman across from me was the same woman I married. "No," I said. "I've been preparing. There's a difference. Planning implies I wanted this. I didn't want this, Renata. I wanted to grow old with you. I wanted to retire in 5 years, fix up the back porch, maybe take a trip to Myrtle Beach. I wanted to sit on that porch with you when we were 70 and say we made it. I let that hang for a moment. But you went to Cancun and made a decision for both of us. So now I'm making one for myself." I slid the sealed manila envelope across the table. "This is from my attorney's office. Curtis picked it up this morning. Inside are the preliminary filing documents for dissolution of marriage. I am not asking you to sign anything tonight. I'm asking you to read them, understand them, and know that I am serious." She put her hand on her stomach. Instinct, I think, or maybe a last attempt to remind me of the life she was carrying, as if that life didn't represent the very thing that destroyed ours. "I also want you to know," I said, keeping my voice level measured, the same tone I use when I'm explaining to a client why their bathroom floor needs a vapor barrier before the tile goes down. Calm, clear, factual. "That I know about Diane. That one hit different." Her eyes went wide. "Diane knew," I said. "She knew the baby wasn't mine. She saw the tablet notification. She helped you change the password. She sat across from me at your mother's table while you announced this pregnancy. And she looked me in the eye and said nothing. And then she came up to me by the screen door and said, and I will quote your sister exactly, 'You seem fine with everything, Gerald.' She smiled in my face. And you let her." Renata put her hands over her mouth. "I don't need you to apologize for Diane," I said. "I don't need you to apologize for anything right now. What I need is for you to understand that the man sitting in front of you is the same man who has always been sitting in front of you. Quiet, steady, patient. But I am done being patient about this. I have given this marriage everything I had. Every dollar. Every early morning. Every sore knee. Every missed vacation. And I am not going to let the ending of it be something that happens to me. I am going to make sure the ending is something I walk into with my eyes open and my papers in order." I stood up. I pushed my chair in. I picked up my truck keys from the hook by the door. "I'll be at Curtis's tonight. He has a spare room. I'll come by tomorrow for some clothes and my tools from the garage." I turned back one more time. "When you talk to Diane, and you will, tell her I wasn't fine. Tell her I was building something. And tell her it's built." I walked out the front door. I didn't slam it. I closed it the way I close everything, carefully, completely, and with both hands. If you've been listening for a while and want stories like this to keep coming, it really helps when you hit that like button and subscribe. 97% of people never do, but it's what keeps this whole thing running. So thank you for real. 8 months later. I'm writing this from a 2-bedroom apartment on the east side of Columbus, about 9 minutes from my old house on Carver Street. The apartment is nothing special. Laminate floors that I could have done better myself, builder-grade cabinets, a shower with uneven grout lines that annoy me every morning. But it's mine, just mine. And there is a peace in that ownership that I have never felt before. The dissolution went through in 8 months. Valerie Chen was worth every penny of her retainer. Because I had 7 years of documentation, 7 years of meticulous, organized records, the asset division was about as clean as these things can get. I kept my truck. I kept my tools. I kept my retirement account, which isn't enormous but it's honest. Renata kept the house, but she'll have to refinance within 2 years or sell, and we both know she can't carry that mortgage alone. The equity split favored me by a meaningful margin because I was able to prove, with receipts and invoices, that I had funded over $32,000 in improvements from my personal side job income. The court recognized that numbers don't lie, not when you document them properly. The paternity test confirmed what I already knew. The baby was not mine. Renata hired her own attorney, and when the results came back, her lawyer quietly withdrew the initial opposition to the dissolution terms. There wasn't much to argue after that. Renata had the baby, a boy. I don't know his name. I didn't ask. That chapter is hers to write, not mine, and I wish that child well. Genuinely. Whatever happened between his mother and me, that boy didn't choose any of it. Diane and I have not spoken since the day I left. I heard through Marcus that she tried to call me once, about a month after the filing went through, and left a voicemail that I deleted without listening to. Patricia, Renata's mother, sent me a handwritten letter 3 months later. 2 pages, front and back, on that yellow legal pad paper she always used. She said she was ashamed. She said she didn't know. She said I was a good man. I believe her on all 3 counts, but I didn't write back. Some doors, once you close them, need to stay closed so you can build a wall where the door used to be. Curtis is still Curtis. We have dinner every other Thursday at a diner on Cleveland Avenue. Burgers, coffee, no alcohol. He never once said, "I told you so." Not once in 14 months. That's the mark of a real friend. He just shows up, orders the same thing, and talks about his grandkids. And when I'm quiet, which is most of the time, he lets me be quiet. He understands that my silence isn't emptiness. It's just how I carry things. Marcus came to see me last month. Drove down from campus on a Saturday, brought a 6-pack of root beer, the fancy kind from that craft soda place in the short north, and sat on my apartment balcony with me for 3 hours. He didn't ask me to explain anything. He didn't take sides. He said, "Dad, I just need you to know I see you. That boy, that young man, he's got a steadiness to him that I'd like to think came from me. From watching me kneel on floors and get back up. From watching me show up every day in the same boots." Tiana took it harder. She's closer to her mother, always has been, and for a while she was angry with me for leaving. But last Thanksgiving, she sent me a text that said, "I'm sorry I was mad. I understand now." For sentences that healed something I didn't know was still bleeding. I called her back that night and we talked for an hour. She told me about her clinical rotations, about a patient who reminded her of me. Quiet, tough, won't take pain meds even when he should. We both laughed. It was the first time I'd laughed in a long time. I ran into Renata once, about 6 months after the dissolution was final. Parking lot at the Kroger on Hamilton Road. She was pushing a cart with the baby in a car seat propped in the front. She looked tired. Not unhappy exactly, just tired. The kind of tired that comes from carrying the weight of choices you can't unchoose. She saw me and stopped, and for a moment I thought she was going to say something, but she just nodded, and I nodded back. And we went our separate ways, which is what we are now. Separate. 2 people who shared 29 years and a house and 2 children and a kitchen table where the truth landed on a Tuesday morning in May. I've thought a lot about what this whole thing taught me. Not the legal stuff, Valerie and Curtis handled that. Not the financial stuff, the numbers were always going to be the numbers. I mean the human part. The part that doesn't fit into folders and tabs and labeled receipts. Here's what I know now. Betrayal doesn't break you. I need people to hear that. It doesn't. What breaks you is the moment you realize that the person who betrayed you needed your silence to make it work. They needed you to be the quiet man, the steady man, the man who doesn't ask questions. They built their lie on the foundation of your character, and they counted on you. Counted on your decency, your patience, your love, to keep the whole thing standing. And that's what you can't forgive. Not the act itself. The fact that they used who you are, the best parts of you, as the hiding place for the worst parts of them. Renata didn't just cheat. She took my trust and turned it into a room she could lock a secret inside. And Diane. Diane took my kindness and turned it into a door she could smile through while knowing exactly what was on the other side. You seem fine with everything, Gerald. She said that to my face, with a dish towel over her shoulder, like it was small talk, like my entire life wasn't unraveling on the other side of that sentence. But here's the thing about quiet men. We hear everything. We see everything. And when we finally move, we move with our papers in order. I don't tell this story for sympathy. I'm 54 years old, and I have more years behind me than ahead, and I don't need anyone to feel sorry for me. I tell this story because there are men sitting in trucks right now, in driveways, in parking lots, on job sites, eating lunch alone, knowing something isn't right but not knowing what to do about it. And I want those men to hear this. Document everything. Be patient. Be steady. Don't let anger make your decisions. Let your preparation make them. Because the truth doesn't need volume. The truth just needs paperwork. 29 years I laid tile. 29 years of getting the surface level, making sure the spacing was right, making sure every piece fit the way it was supposed to. I couldn't make my marriage fit. Some things, no matter how careful you are, crack along a line you never saw. But I can tell you this, the floor I'm standing on now is mine. I laid it myself. And it is level. I'm sitting on my apartment balcony right now. It's early evening. There's a cup of black coffee on the rail, half drunk and getting cold, and the sun is setting behind the Columbus skyline. That thin orange line between the buildings and the sky that only lasts about 4 minutes before it's gone. My boots are by the door. Tomorrow morning, I'll put them on and go back to work. Same boots, same man, same knees on a hard floor, doing honest work, earning an honest living. The coffee's cold, but I'm not going inside yet. Not yet. If you like this story, join our community by hitting that like button and subscribing for more real, raw, and family-centered stories.